we ready to run through some sports, man?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So the NCAA, there's potential for a preliminary, at least, approval, John, of a settlement that's going on. And if people haven't been following this, that basically the $2.8 billion of damages that are out there, that the NCAA is saying, all right, well, this is getting a little bit closer to possible payments, which would then give the opportunity for schools to start allocating out money to some of these players, John. So it becomes a pretty interesting thing. What some people might not like about this is they're looking at about 90% of that money that they're going to have that goes to the various schools of the Power Five. It's going to be, well, how do you allocate it? When you've got football, when you look at the sport itself and what TV revenue and all the revenue that comes in, that's about 90% if you include men's basketball as well. So, you know, a lot of people will be angry about that. I don't know. Nobody really knows exactly how this thing is going to play out, but this is a big money part of the NCAA and what football has been kind of kicking around for a while. We've talked about NIL, we've talked about the portal and all those things, but then this lawsuit, and it looks like they're getting closer and closer to getting something potentially done. And if they do, John, what it looks like right now anyway, it looks like allocation of about $20 million per school. And that's something that will have a cap on it, which I think makes a lot of sense. I don't like the idea of when they started NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, and players can go out there and there is an unlimited cap. And the big get bigger and the small don't. So I like the fact that they're talking about what a cap could look like coming from these schools. I think that makes a lot of sense. What do you think about this? I know that you and I both love the fact that college football and college basketball and college everything are considered amateur sports. They're not anymore, folks. And what do you think about this? It seems like the right direction. If you're going there anyway, at least this gives you some sort of a something to work off of, very similar to the NFL and how they do it.
Yeah, it is also all this cash that these schools have made. They've given, of course, in most cases, scholarships to players, whether it's basketball, volleyball, football. They've given scholarships to these players, which are worth probably in the neighborhood of, depending on if you're from that state or not, $60,000, $70,000 per player. And that was always the kind of trade-off, that the player got free school, if you will, room and board as well, in exchange for their talent on the field. And then TV revenue really started ramping up, as well as a lot of these video games, Pete, that are, you know, tied to NCAA athletes. And the players are saying, you know, hey, that's my face, that's me doing that. Why am I not getting paid? Why is, you know, this video game company and my school, which is making, I don't know, at Ohio State, 100,000 people, at Michigan, 109,000 people, paying whatever they're paying, how many millions of dollars per game, and now Big Ten Network and all the rest making money from that. I mean, yeah, it was, for a long time, the players were like indentured servants to these institutions. Now players are getting paid, and we'll have to see exactly how this allocation of nearly $3 billion plays out, Pete. It will be something that people pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, absolutely it will. All right, let's jump to the NFL real quick. And with the NFL, John, I wanted to run this one by you. What team, and you can have more than one, or if you have one or whatever, but what team do you look at in the NFL right now? We're only 5 games in, but which one that looks terrible to start out in these first 5 games, what are they going to do? And who has the opportunity to still save their season, even though they've started off in a terrible way? And I'm going to throw this one out to you, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Bengals have no defense, but when you look at what they do on offense, this is an offense, and Joe Burrow probably has the best start to a year that he has had since he's been in the NFL. The guy's got 12 touchdowns. He's only got 2 interceptions, John. He's got 2 great running backs that are there in Brown and Moss. And they've got a couple of touchdowns each, so 4 touchdowns, 440 yards rushing. These guys are doing their job. He's got great receivers, got a heck of a tight end. Offensive line has done a great job. He's not getting sacked nearly like he's been sacked in the past, which is why he's been a little healthier. And they just can't seem to be able to buy a game. They're 1-4 right now. I think that they can make a turn, but I don't know. Is there somebody else out there that you say, well, that one's not bad, but these guys could maybe turn even better and get a better opportunity for the playoffs? Or do you like the Bengals' chances at this point?
I like the Bengals, but I agree with Joe Burrow, Pete, and I'm sure you heard him say this. He said, we are not a playoff football team right now. We're not playing that level of football. And he didn't hang it on the defense, because what team player would? You're alienating your defense. You and I can talk about it, but Joe Burrow and the head coach can't really just say, well, our defense sucks. And if they didn't suck so bad, well, take a look at San Francisco, by the way, right now. Pete and I talked about that one. Surprisingly bad. And yet, a topic we're about to hit, maybe there's a guy going to go in there and help them turn that thing around, Pete, because there is a world of hurt going on in San Francisco. It's not that that Purdy sucks and he's thrown 50 interceptions. It's that their defense can't stop anybody seemingly right now. And they were one of the stoutest defenses in football. I'd say it was, Pete, see if you agree. I'd say San Francisco, the Ravens, Kansas City were the three of the best, maybe followed by Philadelphia. But now when you're saying, well, what about teams with a bad start? I might say Philadelphia, Pete. I don't know if they could play any worse than they've played the majority of their games. Not every game was horrible, but they haven't played well in a bunch of their games. So I don't, obviously they're not 1-4 like the Bengals, but they're not too far away.
Yeah. There's some teams that are struggling out there. By the way, the defense for the Cincinnati Bengals, they're number 31 of 32 in terms of points allowed. That's how bad they really are. So the fact that they've even won the one game is a little bit surprising with that defense. So John alluded to this, and now we got to jump to this. NFL, not for long. We talk about that all the time. Everybody's like, what does NFL really stand for? Not for long. And why do I say that? Well, Robert Saleh, see you later from the New York Jets. They basically said, you know what? We got to tap out. We've got to change something up. We've got this Jets team. We went out and got the quarterback that we never had and we need. When I say never, in the last 20 years, though, they haven't had a quarterback. And they keep looking, and they keep looking. Well, they got Aaron Rodgers. They got a bunch of receivers. They got all the guys that he wanted to bring along with him. They had a great defense. Well, it's a team that seems to be in disarray. They can't seem to be able to get themselves into position to close a game, even when it's close for them, John. They can't do it. They just haven't been able to do it. And of course, it starts and ends with the head coach, always. So Robert Saleh, who's one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football, just wasn't getting it done. And they made the decision awfully early, but they said, we're out, no mas. So here's what I got for you on that, John. If I'm the 49ers and our defense is falling apart, do I say, hey, Robert Saleh, come over here. You could be a co-defensive coordinator. We know who you are. We know what you do. We know how you want to run things. So that's a possibility. Or do you bring them over to Cincinnati and say, hey, Robert Saleh, we've got some great guys on our D-line, some decent, linebackers and safeties, but we just aren't doing it. We're not getting it done. We need something to change. I don't think he's going to be hanging around too long, John, before somebody says, hey, we need you. So you don't have a pity party for Robert Saleh. Somebody's going to pick him up, and I think they're going to do it pretty quickly because this guy's one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football. Was he a great head coach? I have no idea because he hasn't had a quarterback yet. And I hate to say it, but I almost have to include Aaron Rodgers. He just hasn't been able – he can't step into the throws, John, like he's done in the past. His arm is still okay, but he can't step into it. I don't know if he's afraid of it or what. But his throws, I watched the game this weekend with the Vikings. He just didn't look like the guy that we all think of when we think of Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know that you could put it on Saleh, but they did. He's going to be available to somebody.
Yeah, and that's the first time, Pete, that Woody Johnson has ever fired a coach during the season. He's fired coaches, and he does it fairly regularly, in fact, but just not during the season. But I agree with you. I would think, obviously, San Francisco because they're struggling, because he was the D coordinator for the 2019 Super Bowl 49er team. Yeah, that's a fit. I'd say also that Cincinnati, to your point, Pete, he could play one off of the other and decide, okay, well, I mean, I think if San Francisco really came knocking, he'd take it, Pete.
Yeah.
But I think Cincinnati is more desperate right now. And as you just described, if you're 31 out of 32 teams, chances are you need to do something like right now to right that ship, especially because Joe Burrow has been banged up a lot in his career, but he's also had fantastic seasons. He's taken them to Super Bowls, things like that. So you need to realize that you're not going to have him as long as a player like, for instance, Aaron Rodgers. He ain't going to be playing when he's 40, in my opinion. I hope he can. I hope he can if he wants to, but I don't think he will because of all the injuries that those take their toll. And, you know, you look at all these different guys like Andrew Luck, and things like that. A lot of those quarterbacks that took those injuries end up retiring right around 30 or even before.
Yeah. And when you look at him, especially, John, he's been sacked so much and he throws the ball. He's still a great quarterback right now. Absolutely. But how long will he want to play as well? He'll want to play a long time, but he'll probably want to also step away when it's just too much for him physically. And you know what? Those sacks add up by the time you get 6, 8, 10 years into the league. It's time to go.
Yeah. Well, folks, we appreciate you joining us. We're going to be running a special hurricane preparedness webinar on Thursday. So look for that on social media. We'll be inviting, it's a free webinar. And we're just going to basically give you some of the best plays, for instance, into times like this. Not in order to feast on somebody else's problems, but which stocks are more likely to be hit because of this hurricane. Insurance company stocks probably. Which stocks are likely to benefit, stocks that help you rebuild and so forth. So we're going to run a special webinar right at the market close on Thursday. You'll start seeing about it on social. Please sign up and we'll talk about it again tomorrow and on Thursday to get you guys all in there so you kind of think the way that we think about looking at which benefit and who gets hurt from what's going to be happening. And by the way, we should all pray for all the folks in Florida and Carolina and Georgia, Tennessee, all these different places where this storm could impact people that have already suffered a lot. So we'll talk about that on Thursday at that webinar. We hope all of you have a great day. See you at 1 p.m. tomorrow.